Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Fight Club commentary. I'm the director, David Fincher. To my right is Brad Pitt. To my left is Ed Norton. And then there is the girl who's in the movie as well. And we're going to be discussing this very controversial flick that we put together. All right, I'm just kidding.
Can this I be Meatloaf?
You're in. You're the man with man teats.
Sweet.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Clerks cartoon commentary, a.k.a. we got so fucked, and this is the only place where you could ever see our cartoon is on video. Not even video, DVD, for heaven's sakes. I'm Kevin Smith. I'm going to introduce you to a bunch of cats, some you know, and some first-timers to the View Askew commentary. Going down from the left, my left, at the end of the table, the man, the legend, the guy who draws pictures and directs cartoons, ladies and gentlemen, Chris Bailey. Say hi, Chris.
Hi.
Sitting right next to him is a legend in this room.
We're all legends.
We are, to each other. A cat who created the show with me and Scott Mosier, and who worked on a little TV show that got canceled very quickly called Seinfeld, as well as SNL. A gentleman you've all come to know and love as the guy at the end of the show, if you ever saw the 2 episodes that aired, who said thanks for watching, with 2 gorgeous chicks and a Hawaiian drink in his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, David Mandel. Say hi, Dave.
Hello.
Sitting next to him is a cat some of you are familiar with as well. He's been on one of our other commentary tracks, I believe, on Clerks, yes?
Yes.
Brian O'Halloran, ladies and gentlemen.
How do?
Y'all know me. And next to me is a cat that we found standing around outside. He said, "Can I do some commentary as well?" And we said, "Sure," and brought him in, gave him a drink and a pack of smokes, ladies and gentlemen, Jason Mewes.
What up?
Pleased to welcome for the first time in one of our commentaries a cat who you've all known and loved for many, many years. A man who needs no introduction. I mean, here he is, Jeff Anderson.
Scott Mosier.
Jeff, say hi.
Hi.
Sitting next to him, Scott Mosier.
Scott Mosier. Hi.
Must you shout?
All right, now that we've all been introduced, we're just going to let it go, man. First episode of Clerks, which never aired on television.
You mean they didn't even show one?
No, they never showed up. Well, they showed 2, but they never showed one.
One was going to be aired 5th, right?
Originally, what it came down to after we did this weird secret test screening was we decided to do 1/5 because it apparently wasn't the strongest episode, even though it set
was
up.
the work print, though, right? I mean, it was.
It was the work print, but what the test audiences didn't seem to dig about the show was that it wasn't as funny as the other show, which we showed them next, which was episode 2. But the reason the show, I feel, isn't as funny as it could have been is because we got very strong notes from the network, and that's how we'll refer to them from here on in, the network. Y'all know who we're talking about. The network said that we needed to set up the premise of Clerks because only 3 people ever saw the movie.
They wanted a real pilot, is what they kept saying to us, or more of a pilot, something that explained stuff. And then after they got it, of course, they said, it seems to explain stuff too much, and we don't like it as much.
Pretty much that's what happened. And I remember when they sat us down, they showed us the pilot to Facts of Life and said, do it like this. And we were like, all right.
Okay, who was Tootie?
Well, Muse, I believe, was the Tootie of our show.
Oh, okay.
Which explains why Randall's on rollerblades.
Look at that, man. Look at that badass.
Did they ever say
Dude,
what
it's not even
Tootie's
you,
real
it's
name was?
It's a fucking cartoon.
Anyone?
Oh,
Anyone?
No, it's
Tootie's
me.
real name?
Tootie's name?
In the show.
Shaniqua.
Really?
I have no idea.
It's very safe.
The firecracker gag was something that kind of was a bitter pill at one point for us to swallow because Jay and Silent Bob, who are known drug peddlers in the 4 features we've done based on 4 features that they've been in, are drug dealers. Everyone knows that. But we couldn't do that on network television.
Everyone except the people who bought the show apparently knew it.
Exactly. And they were like,
What? Drug dealers?
They sell what? And so we had to kind of make them merry mischief makers instead, I believe is what some of the network publicity said about the characters.
There were a couple of amazing moments where we'd be on with legal, corporate legal, and they were explaining all the thousands of things we couldn't do. And at some point, in a fit of anger, I think I said, well, why did, if you can't do any of this, why did they buy the show? And I have to give the lawyer a lot of credit. They actually just sort of said, I'm not really sure why. I wouldn't, if they had asked me, I would have told them not to buy it. And that was probably about the only honest word we ever got.
Yeah, really.
From the legal department, no less.
Yeah.
They were just unfamiliar with the material.
The other thing about that firecracker scene, which was very odd, which is I think it's funny within the context of the show, but they seem to be obsessed with it over at the network. And when they were doing promos for the show before it ever aired, I'm sure we'll discuss the Super Bowl promo and stuff, it seemed like every promo had the firecracker scene in it. That somehow, to them, man hitting firecracker and then blowing up was, to them, the defining moment of the show.
It was kind of, they referred to it
it's
as, well, I don't know, it might have been, but they referred to it as akin to the last episode of MASH, if I remember correctly. They said it's that compelling.
It's BJ saying goodbye in Stones,
But
what they felt.
oddly enough, too, remember at one point there was talk of taking it out as well, because we got another note from the network saying, well, isn't that encouraging kids to use fireworks, and that's a legal matter, and I remember that was something else they flagged at one point.
Well, Dave, wasn't that the original ending of Seinfeld? He throws a quarter stick at Kramer.
Yeah, just boom, fade to black.
Not only was the network conservative, but we actually had a storyboard artist working on the show that was used to working on very safe children's programming. And she picked up a board from Clerks and came back a couple weeks later and said that she was going to have to leave the show. And I asked why, and was she not getting what she wanted? And she said, I just know I'm going to hell for working on the show.
And she did.
Yeah, that was
That's the funniest thing.
Let's talk about how the show came together, man. The whole pitch and whatnot. Because I guess it is kind of odd that there was once a cartoon, albeit very briefly, based on a flick that wasn't seen by many people. Yeah, it was a flick that never played on more than 50 screens, a little black and white flick that was known primarily because it was so foul-mouthed. And here we were with a cartoon version of it on primetime TV. How'd that happen, Dave?
I was just going to say real quick, just for those paying attention, that this is Leonardo, and he's being voiced by Alec Baldwin,
Yes.
who we recorded up in Toronto, and we just had an absolute blast of a day recording with him.
That was cool, and it was
he's-
kind of lent the project a bit more credibility than it ever had before.
Because all of a sudden it wasn't just us and our friends recording things.
Exactly.
Where's Alec today? Couldn't he make it?
He refused to be.
He'll
We were
be
like,
here
Alec, you want to
later.
come for the commentary?
And then he,
he
said
was like,
something
who is
about going
this?
to hell.
He said commentary to what?
Clerks, remember?
Yeah, I just know I'm going to hell for voicing Leonardo.
It was foggy to Baldwin. But we got put together by our agents.
Yeah, which is actually a silly thing if you think about it, because it sounds so stupid that our agents put us together.
They did. They threw us in a room because me and Mosier had been wanting to do a cartoon version of Clerks since '95. And I remember at that point I was repped by another agency, CAA, and tried to take the show out and actually
You'll
sat
just say
down.
their initials.
Right.
CAA.
Tried to sit
No
down.
names.
Tried to sit down did sit down at Fox and pitched a cartoon version, and they were saying, well, the TV animation really only pans out for The Simpsons. It's not really going to work for anything else. The Simpsons is kind of the only primetime cartoon that'll ever happen. So thanks for offering, but no thanks. And then a few years later, man, TV animation prime time became lousy for one brief moment. It was not lousy meaning poor in quality, but lousy meaning tons of it. And thanks to stuff like South Park and King of the Hill. So there was that one brief moment where there were tons of cartoons or primetime animation going through lots of networks. They were developing, and there was us and like the Spade Show, and what was that other show? Family Guy was
Wasteland,
there.
too.
Wasteland
no,
was
not
another one.
Wasteland.
Mission Hill.
Mission
Mission
sorry.
Hill. It was Wasteland. Became Mission Hill.
Dilbert.
Dilbert. I guess we hit them all. Baby Blues, which actually is
That got
still around.
renewed, which actually, in this entire experience, the fact that got renewed and is going to have a second season, and we're sitting here, talking into these microphones.
If only we'd given Jay a baby, that would have saved the show.
A baby with fireworks.
Or a baby that talked very intelligently.
Like Alec Baldwin.
Like another cartoon.
But so years later, we brought it up again, going, well, there's a lot of animation now. Can we try this Clerks thing again? And our present agency, Endeavor, was all about it and said, well, you want to sit down with Dave Mandel. Told me and Scott, you want to sit down with Dave Mandel. He's a guy that worked on Seinfeld. Now Seinfeld's over, and he's looking for work. And so we said, all right. And we met him, and we liked him.
And I have to admit, I think I've said this to you already, but I had sort of always, I took the meeting, if nothing else, was just to meet you guys.
Right.
Because I had sort of always been looking for the excuse. And, you know, the agents always say things like, do you want us to set up lunch? Which just sounded like the gayest thing in the world of like, yeah, let's go have lunch.
No, the gayest thing in the world would have been if the agent said, do you want to set up lunch and then you can fuck Kevin and Scott? That is the gayest thing in the world.
That would be the gayest thing, but a close second.
Right. Second to that was pretty much
Just the
just
lunch.
lunching.
Pay as you exit. Sweet deal. You're right, Sound Bob. Besides, we got some bad news that's gonna rock their feeble clerk world.
But it was then we said, all right, let's do this, and we started talking about ideas, throwing them back and forth, and then we went in to pitch at networks.
Officially standing in front of the quicker stop. Officially.
Look at that dainty walk on Jay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that
Just
was
have to
always
bring that
great.
up.
We always loved that little walk.
It was a mistake. We didn't call for that, but it turned out well.
This was one of those moments that I think the people who saw it, like the network stuff, always sort of questioned it in the sense of like, it just seems like silence. It's people yelling across the street. And it just, that's what made it that much funnier.
Scott, you remember who we pitched to?
We pitched everywhere.
We pitched pretty much everywhere. We did Fox, UPN, Warner Brothers. I think we did everywhere. FX, HBO.
Yeah, HBO. Remember HBO's
Yeah.
meeting? HBO's meeting was kind of great in retrospect, in as much as we were pitching kind of this cleaned up version of you know, the movie. Essentially, we were going to try to do it without the bad language because it was primetime TV that we were angling for, and just kind of try to be funny without being profane, which I'm not talented enough to do and probably never should have attempted, and as we see by the failure of said show. But at HBO, they were just like, well, what about all that dick talk?
Yeah, where are the blowjobs?
Yeah, where they talk about sucking dick. And we're like, well, I mean, you know, I guess we can throw some in there. Like, yeah, because that was the best part of the movie, where they're talking about sucking dicks. I was like, well, thanks. But we went another way. We went with another network.
Oh, no, you fucked
Well,
us.
what happened was, which was weird, was the network that ended up buying the show. Initially, we pitched them, and they weren't interested.
Right. This is a fine line. Tiptoe lightly around this subject.
They were not interested. And then we pitched to the UPN, who at the time was very interested, and it seemed like, you know, we also could have sold them 7 other shows while we were in there too.
We always maintain we pretty much could have just Xeroxed our asses, and they would have ran it for a half hour, at least 12 episodes.
Like, yeah, near wrestling somewhere. Our asses and wrestling share an audience. But they just seemed very receptive, and they offered us 13 episodes on the air. Which then,
We never told you about that.
based on the 13 episodes on the air, the network that had originally turned it down then felt it couldn't. Well, I guess we then flew to New York. I don't know how to even tell this part.
It's
Yeah.
such a touchy subject.
We flew to New York to repitch the show to corporate honchos who shall remain nameless, but are
So
very
how powerful could this guy be?
and
They're
could
still on.
destroy us and end this commentary at any second.
and are probably listening as we speak.
to make sure,
God darn it, Jay said that.
and we repitched it to them.
And we told them, and one gentleman in particular who has all the power in the known universe, we told him, hey man, but UPN offered us 13 episodes, and he assured us that UPN wouldn't exist in a year.
That it would be off the air within a year.
Yeah, he
that
said
were having
they're going the
management
way of
troubles,
8-track and Laserdisc. They're going to be gone. Yeah.
So then they upped their
Jeff will never work in this town again. But we took his word for it, because
Yeah.
we're like, well, he's got to know, right? Here's a dude with the juice.
And we always did think to ourselves, and of course now it seems silly in retrospect, that, you know, why be on UPN when we could be on one of the big three that shall remain nameless. Really swing for the fences. As
Yeah,
we
that was
put
the
it.
idea. It was reach for the brass ring. And folks, I'm here to tell you right now, fuck the brass ring. Get whatever they offer you.
Yeah,
Fucked
big
us,
fish
dude.
in a
I could've
small
had more
pond
loot.
is the greatest thing in the
You
world.
you could have
I
had
got
more.
paid for 13 episodes instead of just 6.
Exactly.
Should have did it just for me so I could get more money.
Well, that was why we did the show in the first place, so you'd stop fucking borrowing money from me. But don't swing for the fucking trees, folks. Just if you're ever pitching a show and like BET says we'll pick it up, just go with it. Never
Yeah,
mind the networks.
in baseball analogies, take the walk, get hit by the ball. Just home runs suck.
I hear you, man.
Hit by the ball.
Yeah, God, I mean, it's true. We could probably do an hour on the lament, just the regret of
I know,
not
I actually
reaching smaller. We should have been
This, by the way,
big fish
hold
in
on,
the
hold on.
small
That's a
pond.
great gag, by the way. And Kevin, that was your gag, and that
Thank
was
you.
excellent.
We should have been the big fish in the small pond. Instead, we wound up being the fucking piranha-eating fish, guppy, in the big pond. If the pond was a TV network, and the analogy,
fish were people.
and fish were people, and the piranha was the Survivor, which we actually aired the first night of as well.
But not just Survivor, because the other thing, too, is on this nameless network, is that when we pitched the show and they did buy it, and they came in after the UPN episode, I believe they were in 3rd or 4th place at the time. And then we started out with our scripts and the animation process, which takes many months, which Chris will talk about later. And we delivered, I think it was in January, and this nameless network had just premiered a new show called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and all of a sudden went from 4th to 1st. And when you're in last place, I think you think about things like, hey, let's air Clerks. That seems interesting.
Right.
And when you're in first place, I don't think you want to air it as much.
It's true. A game show kind of helped put the kibosh on what we were eventually
Regis
trying to do.
fucked us.
Yeah, Regis did, but I give Regis props because I remember watching that show and him saying, "Coming up, Clerks," and I was like, "Wow, Regis finally said Clerks."
Although, ironically, his audience of 50 to 60-year-olds are the ones that were most responsible for driving us from the air.
Do something.
People. Oh, I was just gonna say, like our numbers were never good, but if you did sort of like overanalyze them, as I did, we had a lot of like I shouldn't say a lot because a lot is very deceptive, but it's like our numbers of like teens and 20-year-olds were consistent and strong for the time period. It's just none of them knew the show was on the air because there was no promotion. But anyway.
And there was no promotion because while we were doing our super secret test of the first 2 episodes for our own edification, the network was having its own test screenings in 2 markets. One was, does anyone remember the markets?
San Diego.
San Diego.
Cincinnati.
Yeah, San Diego
Ohio.
and Ohio, somewhere in Ohio. And they recruited a test screening audience to watch the show and rate it. However, they didn't recruit for Clerks, they recruited for another show.
And they were looking specifically for whatever the show was going to be. It sounded like it was either going to be like an hour drama or something, because the audience that they gathered
Didn't
was
have our demographic.
It
There
was like an over 30 audience,
Yeah.
specifically with women too. And this is a show that has no women in it. That's
Right.
You may not notice that if you're
which
watching.
we'll get to that later. That was
Not
another
attractive women.
That was another big problem we had originally when they wanted us to put women in. But we'll touch on that later. But yeah, we were missing that crucial like 12 to 25-year-old demographic in the test screening, which probably would have helped our scores out a lot. But they tested it to a bunch of 30-year-olds and over, who apparently were not very familiar with our stuff or the movie Clerks and just didn't like the fucking cartoon at all. And they really rated it poorly, and that's when I think the network got very cold feet and said, well, we're not going to show this show.
Although we're not really sure what happened, if you want to get technical.
Yeah, if you want to get really technical, because nobody ever told us. I mean, and we should point out for the record that the network at one point was so high on the show that they gave us a Super Bowl spot.
If you watched the Super Bowl last year, the Rams versus... Who did the Rams play?
Tennessee.
Rams, Tennessee.
On said unnamed network.
Rams, Tennessee, if you watch that Super Bowl, they promoted all of their primetime lineup, and only two of their new shows. One was the big Mary Rhoda reunion show.
Right.
And we were the other show. They gave us 2 promos,
And it
one right
wasn't-
before the game, one right after the game.
It wasn't a very good spot. In fact, it was cut by one of the chief honchos at the network, correct?
That's what we were told.
But
and
at
who
least it
really
was a
liked the
spot.
firecracker.
Yeah, boy, he loved the firecracker gag and insisted on calling everyone slackers.
Big on slackers.
Big
It
on
was-
the term slacker.
It was like your grandmother cut a promo because it was like, if you like slackers,
Come watch Clerks
the Slacker Show.
on the Slacker Network. For
It'll be
slackers.
slackeristic.
The slackeriest show you'll ever see.
It's slacktastic.
Who wants to be a slacker?
And apparently nobody wanted to be a slacker, and that was the bad thing.
But I mean, at the time, though, I was watching it with a big room of people, and it was like, oh my God.
I think that was the biggest laugh we've ever got on the show.
But I was going to say, it was like, oh my God, we got a promo. And people do watch the Super Bowl. So all of a sudden it was like, wait a second, this is going to be a show. And then it was like,
Hold that thought. We'll
Yep.
continue it on we'll continue it on the next episode. But right now we should give a shout out to these little spots that nobody probably saw because they never aired.
they're coming up. That's
yeah,
right.
coming right up.
I feel bad we didn't really talk much about the specifics of this episode, but anyway.
Nothing to talk about.
Yeah, I guess not. Well, some of the casting and
The
stuff.
safety tips was Mandel's idea. Mandel really wanted to do safety tips, kind of like, or those little interstitials you used to see on the Super Friends.
Yeah, the
and
Super
stuff
Friends
like
is a
that.
major influence on this show.
So these were something we were very proud of and hope to do for every episode for our 10-year run that we expected to have, based on the false promises of the network.
And that really is Charles Barkley, who I don't exactly know how it happened, but we started writing these things, and at some point, Charles Barkley actually was like the other cast member of the show because he appears in every
show,
episode. We
yeah.
managed to once he agreed, we just started writing him into places. And I'm not sure if he knows how funny it was, but it's really funny.
I always like the gag where Jay goes, "Kids, if Silent Bob could talk after I've just already spoken." So this pretty much ends this episode. We can talk out over the credits, but we'll come back on 2 and talk more.
The guy who, by the way, did the voice and also is our, I think, announcer at the top is Kevin Richardson, right?
Yeah, it was great.
Who's excellent. And actually, he did the voice in the show of Desmond Pfeiffer.
Here comes the best moment in TV history of the year 1999.
That's me.
Genius.
You're watching.
The original plan was lying naked on a pile of money.